Hi, I'm Lisa Simpson, and I am in the Department of Special Education in the College of Education. So I'm very excited to be here today to share with you a little bit more about autism spectrum disorders. Although we had a wonderful speaker in our first panel this morning, a parent of a college student with autism, and I was really happy to hear all the great things he had to say. So he actually said many things that I'm going to say as well, so there will be some overlap, but it was really nice for him to share the successes of his son this morning. So let me see if I can get that all right. So what is autism? Just a little bit about it. It's a spectrum disorder. It's a developmental disorder largely characterized by deficits in social interaction and communication. So individuals with autism then would have difficulty with relationships, establishing those relationships, maintaining those relationships. Also in the area of communication, some individuals may have a lot of difficulty with communication, others not so much, and more on the nonverbal and the literal interpretation. Almost all of them, no matter where they are on the spectrum, will have difficulty with the social aspects of communication, figuring out what is the language to use in a particular social situation. We also see our individuals with autism exhibit very restricted and repetitive interest. For our young children, that's often very repetitive patterns of behavior. I'm sure many of you have seen classic signs of young children with autism with the hand flapping or the spinning around. We don't see that so much at the college level. By the time they get to college, oftentimes they've learned how to manage those behaviors, but we may still see very restricted interest in that they have a very favorite topic that they like to talk about and include in every opportunity that they can. We also see that individuals with autism are very frequently challenged by sensory input. So one of the diagnostic criteria is that sensory piece. So they may be very sensitive to noise and lights, particularly in the classroom. They may also be sensitive to touch. Right? Autism is a spectrum disorder, so it has a wide range of characteristics. Everybody with autism may show different characteristics within the broader spectrum. Each individual is unique. Each individual has their own set of strengths and weakness. In the autism world, we like to say if you've seen one individual with autism, you've seen one individual with autism, because they're unique in their characteristics and how they manifest that. We now have 1 in 68 children being diagnosed with autism, so we've seen quite an increase. Much of our focus has been on that early intervention. We saw a huge increase starting in the early 2000s. Well, now those young children have grown up, and so we are seeing more and more of our students with autism attending college. Much of the increase in the incidence of autism, we're seeing more and more people on the milder end of the spectrum or high functioning. And these are our students that may show up on our college campus. So what would be some of the characteristics that our college students show that have autism? So probably the biggest challenge is that attending to social cues, right? So understanding what's going on in that social situation. That means they may have difficulty entering a conversation, maintaining a conversation once they get in, so carrying on that topic that was already part of the conversation, not steering it back to their favorite subject. So remember, they have that favorite interest, that repetitive interest. So we'll often see that they will steer the conversation to what's interesting to them, not taking in the interpersonal part of it. I say something, then I let the other person say something. It tends to, once they get in the conversation, to turn into more of a monologue. And then how do you get out of a conversation? So all those social pieces of, cutting off the conversation, ending it politely, going on your way, that may be difficult. When they're done talking, and then they just walk away. We see these social deficits really impact their friendships. We heard our parent earlier in the first presentation talking about his son with autism really didn't have a friendship until he was a sophomore in college. So it is very challenging for individuals with autism to really develop those friendships. We also see at the college age that may impact their ability to have romantic relationships. And may not be, oftentimes we think, well, they just don't want that. It may not be that they don't want it, they just don't know how to make that happen. Okay? Social deficits also impact daily living activities and vocational success. So just about everything we do as we go through life involves some level of social interaction, which can be very challenging for our students with autism. We think about job situations. Many times our individuals with autism are able to carry on the functions of the job. They know what needs to be done, but they have very difficult time maintaining that job because of the social relationships. They don't know how to interact with the customers or with their supervisor, so they end up being let go from jobs because of that social piece. And they aren't able to problem solve social situations. So most of us will understand if we've made a social faux pas, sorry, we need to apologize. We need to make sure that we have repaired that social situation, but they don't recognize that they need to repair it, and they don't understand how to repair that social problem. So that may come off as seeming like, well, they don't have any empathy, they don't care about what the other person thinks. And it may not necessarily be that they don't care, it's that they don't have that ability to really understand that perspective and that understand how to repair that social problem that they have created. Also, characteristics like interpreting that body language that may be around personal space. So these may be individuals that stand far too close to you for comfort. You would prefer that they back off a little bit. Or sometimes we see on the opposite end where they'll stand really far away and try to carry on a conversation. And you're like, why doesn't that person come a little closer to me if they want to talk to me? So body language, personal space, facial expressions, not really recognizing, when someone is upset with you, they'll make a particular expression with their face. Students, especially in the younger grades, will pick up on that really quickly. The teacher's looking a certain way, so now's not a good time for me to ask for such and such. Or our individuals with autism often don't pick up on that at all, so they don't recognize that someone is upset or a little frustrated, and they just plow ahead, trying to move on to their agenda. Okay. So with all of these social challenges, as it might come as no surprise, our individuals with autism often experience a lot of loneliness and rejection and low self-esteem. Right? So I think many years ago when I first got into this field, we sort of had the idea as the so-called experts, well, they don't really want those social relationships, so they're not experiencing those feelings. But we do know now that oftentimes they want those relationships, they just don't know how to go about getting those relationships and making them happen. So we are now understanding much more of the mental health aspect to it. We're seeing and recognizing that many of our students with autism also have a lot of anxiety. We're seeing also comorbid diagnosis of anxiety disorders, where years ago we pretty much thought of them as separate. a student with autism or an individual with autism didn't also have an anxiety disorder. Now we see very much overlap that they can also have an anxiety disorder in addition to the autism spectrum disorder. If you talk to any of our individuals, we have a lot of first-person narratives now available, books to read by people who are adults with autism and describing their life, and many, many times they describe a life that was full of anxiety, trying to understand the many, many, many different social situations and challenges just that they had to live with every day, all day. We see that our individuals with autism may have problems with that higher order thinking skills, problem solving. I know Ken this morning was talking about his student really struggling with the executive function deficits, and it's a classic characteristic of individuals with autism. He was saying that his son really struggled with history, and he ended up failing the history class, not because he didn't know the history content, but he couldn't organize his history notes the way the teacher wanted it. So that is also a very, very common characteristic, is that inability to organize and prioritize what's important to complete for class and how to complete it. Okay. So what are some of those classroom challenges that we see? Asking for help. If they don't recognize they need help, or they don't know how to ask for help, they won't come forward. They'll just keep plowing on down that path and not do anything to make their life a little easier. Collaborating in groups and participating in discussions. If you are someone who is challenged by social interactions, you probably are not going to seek out group activities. So when these are part of classroom assignments or classroom structure, that can be very difficult for them. With the executive functioning challenges, it may be very difficult for them to manage a regular course load. And I believe we heard some of our parents saying that as well earlier, that they took a reduced course load. So we see that in many different ways. They don't have to take that traditional course load, thinking about taking fewer classes during the semester and then taking a course during the winter term, maybe 2 courses during the summer term, so they can spread it out a little bit more. With the executive function, we also see that they are easily distracted in class if there's a lot of different things going on. Similar to our brain injury students, being able to weed out other conversations, or if there's group activities, they may be really challenged by that. If they're also struggling with some of the sensory pieces, the noise from the lights, the noise from other people talking, all of that may be very overwhelming and make it difficult for them to pay attention to the instructor and what's going on in the classroom. Okay. They often also have very poor insight into how they're doing in class, so they may actually think they're doing well. If you ask them, well, how do you think it's going? I think it's fine. It's fine. Everything's good, when actually they're failing the class. So they may not even recognize the trouble that they're in with being able to pass that class. So we're running out of time, so kind of quickly moving through these, what kinds of accommodations. So our other 2 speakers also talked about if you can provide lecture notes or the slides prior to class to give them that information ahead of time. Allow the use of a note taker or a tape recorder so they can record what's going on in class and then go back and hear it again, or have that transcribed into written information, pick out the important pieces. I think what's probably accommodation more unique to our individuals with autism is really understanding how to organize those materials for class. Just like Ken said, his son failed history because he couldn't figure out how to organize the class notes. Our college students may have that same struggle in figuring out how do I organize all this material for class. If there's lecture material and lab material and material I'm supposed to do online and submit online and other things I'm supposed to bring to class with me and turn into the professor, that may be very challenging for them. So they may need very explicit directions in how to do all of that. What the expectations are for each student needs to be, or for each assignment, needs to be very clearly conveyed to them, and not expect that because you set it for one assignment that they will automatically know that, oh, the next assignment needs to be done the same way. It's like everything is starting from scratch. So be sure and give them very clear expectations for the first assignment, the second assignment, the third assignment. It may seem like you're saying it multiple times, but they need to hear it multiple times. If you can take those large assignments and break them down into smaller pieces and help the student organize that. So by such and such date, you need to be starting on the research. By such and such date, you need to be creating the rough draft. By this date, you should be working on the final draft. So that's a real area of struggle, is being able to take those longer term assignments that you give them the information at the beginning of the semester in the syllabus. They don't automatically recognize that there are pieces that need to happen along the way. So they may need some individual guidance in how to break those assignments down and regular check-ins with the professor to actually make that happen and help them complete that successfully. Right.
Is it okay to stop here?
Want to stop here? Okay. You can read those.
I bet we can share the slides.
We can share the slides.